Hello everybody and welcome back to Screen Stars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2018 horror movie The Golem, a film that is directed by Doran Paz and Yoav Paz, and tells a story of a small Jewish community set well in the past that has its safety threatened as there's a plague on the loose that is ravaging the other local communities, but this Jewish community isn't affected by it as yet, and all the other locals outside of this community think that this Jewish community is cursing them. So this Jewish community comes under immediate threat. Now there is a husband and wife. We have Hannah and Benjamin, who have suffered a personal loss in the past. They lost a child, and they can't conceive any more children, so it would seem. And there is Jewish folklore that they can create something called a golem. It's kind of made out of mud and clay, etc. And you can set it loose to take out your enemies. So when their village comes under immediate threat from these outside villagers who believe they're being cursed by this Jewish community, they threaten them immediately, and one of them turns up with his daughter and says, "If you don't kill my daughter, we're going to burn your village to the ground." So Hannah takes it upon herself, who's been studying these Jewish books, to create her own golem, which she does, and it's in the image of her dead child. This child turns up into the community. However, they soon realise that this evil golem creature is just as much a threat to them as it is to their enemies. So that's essentially the story that we get here with this film. Now, what did I think of Golem? Well, I thought this film actually reminded me in a lot of ways of the movie The Witch. You know, that film from a couple of years ago. Now, that film, The Witch, was a very, very well received film, but there are some people that don't like that film. They think it's far too slow paced and not a great deal happens, etc., etc. But essentially, it's a really, really very well made film and quite gritty and realistic. Well, this film is kind of cut from the same cloth as The Witch, even though it's a different subject matter. It feels very authentic, gritty and dirty, and the costumes, the setting, the location, the world building, everything here makes you believe that this is indeed a Jewish community set in the time that it's meant to be set in. And I think they do an excellent job with that, I really, really do. But the problem, I suppose, with this film is it's supposed to be a horror film, and it's light on the horrific side of it. There are a couple of standout scenes that stick in the mind, but this is light on the horror, and very little, in fact, happens for the first 50 minutes. It's all set up basically, and it's just not overly, well, it's not frightening at all, even though, because it's well written and well made and well directed, if you like, the characters, you're invested in these characters. You're invested in Hannah, this wife, and her husband Benjamin. You're invested in them because they are portrayed particularly well, and you actually care a little bit for this Jewish community because it's fleshed out well on screen and it feels very authentic and real. So you don't really want anything bad to happen to this community, because we know, living in the modern world, that they aren't cursing people, and they're just trying to live out a quiet life. But unfortunately for me, right at the beginning of this film, there's like the first 5 minutes we are introduced to a golem, and we see a little girl see this golem, who actually grows up to be someone who's in this community later on. And the golem you see at the beginning of the film looks pretty menacing and pretty fierce, and that's what you think you're going to get later in the film, something similar. But what you actually get is a non-terrifying little boy who does some pretty terrifying things, I suppose. Now, children in horror films can sometimes work, and I'll give you examples like The Omen and things like that. It can work, but this doesn't really work in this film. It doesn't. This child doesn't come across as menacing enough, and I would have preferred this big hulking golem creature that we saw at the beginning of the film. I think that's what I was hoping for, and we don't get that, if I'm honest. Well, you don't get it at all. You get this little child doing some pretty horrific things occasionally. But it is watchable, very, very watchable, this film. I watched it all the way through and I didn't feel bored. It is a bit of a slow burn, but it's a well crafted film, so that you feel that what you're watching is something that's been crafted with a lot of care and attention, and it's got some pretty skilled actors in this production, so everything about it makes it watchable. It just, the elements that are supposed to make it a horror film kind of let the film down, because it doesn't feel horrific to me. It's more of a drama with, you know, light sprinkles of horror in it occasionally. So I'll give it a 6 out of 10. It's not a bad film. It's just not what I would call a particularly horrific horror film by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a great idea. So that's my review for The Golem. If it's a film that interests you, go out and give it a watch, guys, and let me know what you think in the comments. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Screen Stars.